Welcome back to the latest edition of Until Saturday live reaction show. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by, in a blazer for some reason, Dave Ubben.
I just got back to my hotel, Ari. Come on now.
Yeah, you got to take the tarp off, dude. After a day like
Do
that,
you? Nah,
you got
it's not
to
hot.
undo the collar and kind of relax. But here, listen, I'm just going to make a proclamation right out of the gate here. Okay. I thought that was the best Saturday of the year so far, and the best one dating back to maybe a few years ago. I was completely enthralled by the results of the games that I was watching in every single window, starting with Texas, Kansas State, then the game that you were at, Mizzou, Georgia, and then, of course, the night games were incredible. And because we don't really know where to start, why don't we just go from latest to morning, because that's what's the topic of conversation. So I would ask you how disappointed you were that Fogo de Chao was closed and wouldn't deliver to you tonight, because that was
very
an issue for
actually.
you.
I was thinking
But
about
we
it.
don't have the time. We don't have the time tonight to have meat shaved into your mouth conversations. I think we have just too much football to get to.
Just for the record, since Fogo de Chao was closed and I couldn't get picanha delivered to my hotel room, I went with the normal Shack burger. So
yeah, I think it's a normal order. Yeah. You didn't go with steak being shaved into your mouth. You just went into a good hamburger to get you through the day. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dave, I'm super excited to talk to you about the game that you were at. But first, why don't we just start with one of your preseason predictions, LSU maybe being an outside national championship contender and Alabama not being it this year. Alabama wins 42-28. Jalen Milroe, 374 yards and 4 touchdowns. I thought Jaden Daniels on the other side looked incredible too until he got hit late. And, combined total yards, 756, 7 total touchdowns, 1 turnover. I think Jalen Milroe's 4 rushing touchdowns is the first time that any Alabama quarterback in the history of the program has rushed for 4 touchdowns in one game, which I find kind of crazy to believe. You would think that at some point somebody would have done that. But unfortunately for you,
fleet-footed AJ McCarron probably did that.
Yeah, I don't know, Blake Sims or somebody. But I'm putting you on notice, and I'm putting everybody on notice. And if you think that we only talk about blue blood programs, then you're just gonna have to deal with it for the next 5 minutes until we get into all the other ones. We're gonna talk about the group of 5. We're gonna talk about all sorts of different things right now. But first, my wife just turned on the television so loud it lost my train of conversation. Did you hear that?
I did. It's okay, Ari.
It's kind of got me off my game here, but I'm putting you on notice, and I'm putting everybody on notice. We are not going to be getting through the college football playoff discourse without Alabama a part of it now. I mean, they're firmly back in it, and I hate to admit it, but are they good enough to win the national title this year?
I mean, here's the thing, Ari. The short answer to your question is yes. We always have this conversation.
I know.
We have this conversation. We're talking about the most talented team in America. So, yeah, they're good enough to win the championship. Now, are they good enough to get through, Oregon and Georgia and Florida State and Michigan? I don't know. But, we've struggled all year to talk about this because Alabama is so tough to talk about because you watch them before the season. And I think all the things we thought have been mostly true, and that they kind of have a dearth of weapons offensively. The offensive line really struggles to pass block. Their pressure rate, I think they're 119th nationally. I'd have to check where it is now, but they're outside the top 100 in protecting Jalen Milroe from being under pressure. All those things have been true. It's not like they've had all these weapons come out of nowhere, but the defense is very good. They've leaned into Milroe. They know how to use him very, very well, know what he's good at. And I think he's improving a little bit too. So Alabama is a complicated situation, but sorry. I think the most talented team in America is good enough to win the national championship.
Well, if you would have, here's the thing. Since Alabama began the season with the quarterback dysfunction, and after losing to Texas, we have talked about them very little. We glance about it a little bit. Okay, hey, they beat this team or they beat that team. Are they going to make it to Atlanta? It's been passing discussion, but now, maybe even starting on Tuesday, I don't know what the rankings are going to look like, but Alabama is definitely a main fixture in that discussion in a world where there's a lot of people and a lot of teams that are vying for that discussion point. So I think that they need to come back to front row center. The light is on them, all those things. And the thing that I'll say about Alabama, their defense is very good. They're fast, they hit hard, all those things that we know about the most talented team in America. And I don't know how much of this was LSU's D, but Jalen Milroe actually looks like he's just found himself, and they're using him in a way where they can let him, run and use his legs and be an athlete. And, he makes some throws that are pretty incredible at times, but, the offense is really working well when he just gets out and breaks contain and kind of can do his thing. So, I don't know if that's going to be good enough to beat a team like, Georgia in the SEC championship game. I don't know if it's good enough to win 3 games in a row against very good teams, but what I do know is if you ask Kirby Smart who the last team in the conference that he wants to play is, it's Alabama, and it's a team that they're going to have to play. And last week I came and I was sitting in a hotel much like you are right now after a Georgia game, and I was very convinced that, that team is the cream of the crop and is going to win the national championship. But like, if you put the Georgia team that we watched on television today, which we'll get to, against this Alabama team in Atlanta in a dome, I'm not 100% certain that Georgia would win that game. And then at that point, you're putting Alabama up against Washington or, Florida State or another one of these teams that just is not equipped athletically to compete with them. So, it's going to be a very interesting scenario. I don't know if there's a scenario out here that after this long winding road of parity in the sport and all these crazy teams that are new onto the scene and exciting and sexy, that like Alabama doesn't beat Georgia and both get in. Like, who knows?
Well, that's the thing, Ari. I don't think I think it's important to note that Alabama, to get in the playoff, is obviously going to have to beat Georgia to win it all. I would say decent shot. You got to beat Georgia twice.
Beat Georgia twice, or beat Georgia twice, or beat Georgia once, then beat Ohio State or Michigan once, and then beat Florida State or Washington or Oregon or one of these other teams.
Ari, a week ago you're telling me we're about to hand Georgia the trophy, and now we don't even.
I still think that I still think that. Well, here's the thing that changed. It's not that Georgia changed; it's that we added another team built like Georgia into the equation that we weren't considering last week.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, I still think that Georgia is the team. But if it's not the team and Alabama is, then it's still the same thought process, Now, I don't know how to break down Ohio State, who's the third team that's built that way. I've been kind of cold on them this year, and, they didn't really knock my socks off against Rutgers on Saturday. But, there are a lot of teams that are still in the mix, but you just let another wolf into the hen house. They're back. And it's how we break them down and how the committee breaks them down is going to be a fascinating discussion. And throughout the rest of the course of November and into maybe December, when the championship games are being played, Alabama is going to be a fixture in that conversation. And I think they earned that. Now, LSU,
they still have a defense. That's it. I mean,
they don't play D. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm being fooled by Milroe. There was that one play where Milroe rolled right and hesitated for a second on what looked like he was going to pitch it, and then froze the entire defense and then just slammed right through the middle of the D and scored on that 15-yard run. I was like, God, that guy is really feeling himself right now. And if you let Milroe get comfortable and confident, and they solve their quarterback issue to a point where at least it's a functional playmaker, regardless of whether it's as a passer or a runner, when you combine that with Isaiah Bond was open the entire game again. I don't know if that's LSU's defense or if that's a young receiver finding himself, but it looks like Alabama is starting to come into its own at the right time. And let me tell you, buddy, I think I might just say it. Like, I think that Alabama is more likely to win the national championship than any of these other teams that we talk about that aren't built that way.
I mean, Ari, I still think you're overreacting a little bit to. I know that you would never overreact to something, but
no, I'm always right down the middle here.
LSU and the way that team is composed was cooked up in a lab to make Alabama's deficits look like they're not deficits, i.e., skill position talent. I tried to warn you on the picks show. I said on Thursday, big game coming for Jalen Milroe. He's going to have a big game because everybody has a big game against LSU's defense. I need to check where they are in the stop rate, but I can guarantee you it's not good. Basically, any defensive metric, it's not good for LSU. And so I don't think that Alabama, that's not to say Isaiah Bond didn't have a great game or that Jalen Milroe didn't have a great game, but LSU can't cover. Their secondary, they're racked with injuries. Schematically, they just can't seem to get on the same page. They have busts all over the place. Their tackling is not good. So I don't disagree with anything you said about Alabama, but I think when you play a team with a functional defense, those skill position warts are going to be a lot more evident than they were tonight. So
I just have a hard time,
to some degree, you're right,
dismissing putting up 42 against LSU and playing in a game like that.
No, it's LSU, dude. Everyone's putting up. Ole Miss scored 55 on them. So what do we think about that? Like,
here's what I think. I think that Alabama has 3 remaining games in the regular season against Kentucky, at Chattanooga, and at Auburn. All 3 of which they'll probably be double-digit favorites in. And then they're going to be playing in the Dome against Georgia probably. So, let's see what you want to say, but that's happening. So
over under Alabama 24.5 points against Georgia in the Dome.
Probably right. That's a good number.
Thank you.
I'd say over, but not feeling confident about it.
Yeah.
I think they could score 28, 31.
I
think they could win a game.
I don't against this Georgia. I don't think so against this Georgia.
Yeah, but then if that happens, then you're right back with Georgia again. So I mean, like it's not Alabama is just not eliminated before we get to Atlanta, which then creates a new wrinkle in the discourse and super exciting to add them back in. So okay,
a lot on the
Speaking
table
of
in Atlanta,
high level football, and I made this comment. Let's move to USC Washington. Washington beat USC 52-42. Let me just tell you a stat about this game, and then I'll read the other stats.
I know where you're going. I can't wait.
You say it then.
Mr. Dylan Johnson,
of
Washington fame, a good running back, good player, not a freak.
Solid player.
199 yards before contact.
If he had 199 yards before contact, which is one of the most unbelievable stats I've ever heard in my entire life. How many rushing yards would I have? 50?
Well, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Think about it. I run a 7-second 40.
We were talking about this before the show, Ari. We need to go back and look numerically, but the defense is under Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. I feel like if you looked at some metrics or you looked at them in the right light or you caught them at the right angle, you could say, that defense had some things. They showed some promise, or early in the season when the schedule wasn't that tough, you could see some shine. This USC defense feels like it's significantly worse than any that we saw at Oklahoma.
That's a good segue.
I need to go look at the numbers.
I tweeted, I know I'm the king of hyperbole. It's a toxic flaw. I'm working on it.
I love this flaw, Ari. It's one of my favorite things about you. You're breathlessly hyperbolic at all moments. It's a beautiful thing.
Worst defense I think I've ever seen. Help me.
I'm not going to disagree with you. With you.
Is it hyperbole?
I mean, maybe. We'd have to. Well, how about worst defense you've ever seen on a top 25 team? How about that?
I don't think here's the thing. When the ball is snapped, it feels like the entire defense is going backward, and nobody is in position to touch the ball carrier until he's at least 5 yards down the field. It's soft. They can't tackle. Players out of position. It is just downright awful.
Yeah.
When I was watching the game, it felt like USC wasn't even trying to stop them until they got 5 yards.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like that. And I know that Washington's good, and I don't want to take away from their win. Washington obviously remains unbeaten and is going to be a main focal point in the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday, as they should be. And their quarterback is going to be a top 3 member probably in our Heisman straw poll. That said, what the hell? I mean, I don't know. They had to have spent the entire offseason focusing on this, right?
Well, do they
even tackle in practice?
It's a great question. Well, I'd love to know, but as we have covered many times, most colleges shut down practices. We see very, very little of practices at any time. But ultimately, Ari, I think the thing that's most concerning for me is that every time you hear Lincoln Riley talk about it, and it's not like you got to throw Alex Grinch under the bus or throw your players under the bus. You have to do that, but it's the same type of, we're close. We've got to get a couple things right, this or that. And it's like, I know you don't think that, but if you do, that's even more concerning. Like this.
Well, there were a few shots at the end of the game where Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator, and Lincoln Riley were just hunched over at the waist, looking down at the ground. And I think that like there's a certain level of desperation here of like, it was 4th and 18. USC was down by 3. And they were at the 40-yard line. Caleb Williams took a terrible sack, and they got pinned way behind the marker. It was a terrible sack to take, but he had people in his face his entire game. And when they lined up to punt, and then they punted down inside the 10, I thought to myself, from an analytics perspective, would it make more sense to give Caleb Williams, one of the best athletes we've seen play the quarterback position in college football the last 10 years, a shot at converting 4th and 18? Is that a better play than punting it? Because at the very least, we know that Washington's going to get right back down to midfield in 5 plays. Like, what do you have to lose by even giving the ball up voluntarily? The second they punted down 3, the game was over because they went, and what did they do? 93 yards right down the field. And Dylan Johnson was running free. I don't even know how you could even in good faith punt. They don't stop.
Get my guy Kevin Kelly on with you, fellow Arkansan, the coach who never punts, from Pulaski Academy. Are you familiar with his work, Ari?
Yes, I am.
That's
the never punt or don't punt inside your own 20, or you only punt if you're inside your own 20 guy.
It didn't go great for him at Presbyterian for the 1 year, but he won like a bajillion state titles in the state of Arkansas. But it's an interesting question. I mean,
and I don't know if he just like as a blanket thought, but I thought in that situation, watching the game and knowing what was coming, if you punt the ball away in your head, if you're Lincoln Riley and you send your punt team out, even on 4th and 18, I know it sounds crazy, do you think you're getting a stop?
I mean, surely not. I think it's, in the chat, our friend Noah Pants Party is referring to Lincoln Riley as Bizarro Kirk Ferentz. I think that the parallels minus the blood relation are remarkably similar, because everyone else watches these teams every week, and they're like, how is this happening? Smashing the panic button over and over again. You guys got to make some changes. Something's got to change. And they're like, well, we'll get it. We got to go back and work. And I think you dig your hole deeper when you sort of play this game of like, well, we'll be okay. We're close. We got to fix a couple things, or, this is our DNA, or this is who we, play stylistically or whatever. It's hard to watch. And I think we touched on this earlier in the season. Caleb is pretty special, man. He does some unbelievable things. His arm talent.
He had a few plays in that game. I don't know if you were driving home, Dave. There were a few plays where he made and my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah, he does stuff every week where you're just like, dude, like that's crazy. And he's going to end his career without doing a ton, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So just to clarify the Pac-12 football standings now, Arizona and UCLA are playing right now. Both of those teams come into the game with 2 losses. Washington is in first place in the Pac-12 race with a 6-0 record. USC now is 5-2 with 2 losses in conference play, in Oregon, who scored 1,000 points against Cal at 5-1. So it looks like we're kind of on a collision course for those 2 teams to play again, which would be an awesome game in Vegas.
I can't wait.
That said, too, I think that this was I want to make this point before we move on. I think that USC losing or Washington beating USC was a nice step in the right direction if you were afraid of the Pac-12 eating each other. In order for USC to not win games, and they still have to play Oregon, but if USC drops games to Oregon and Washington, that stops them from being hurt with a loss going into Vegas, which might be a play-in game for the playoff, which is what we hope for the Pac-12, because we don't want them to be 2 lost teams or teams that are already out going into that game.
And Washington has shown some warts, with the Stanford, the Arizona State games were weird, but those teams didn't have the firepower to catch up to you. And I think we saw, nothing fixes an offense faster than playing USC or LSU. So I thought Washington would be okay here, but if for whatever reason they weren't the superpower that we'd seen earlier in the year and played more like they did the last couple of weeks, USC had the firepower to match them, and they hung for a lot of that game. But Washington has an okay defense, not great. Oregon's is much better, but USC does not. And it's just like the Alabama-LSU game. These were mirror images of each other in some ways because both of these offenses are great, but one of these teams has a defense. One of them does not. And shocker, Ari, the team that does won both games.
Our producer is going to kill me, but I didn't intro the show, so I'm going to do that real quick. Just officially welcome to well, it's good that we talked about the night games first, and then we'll get into it. There's so much more to go. This is going to be a 3-hour episode.
Well,
welcome to Until Saturday's Week 10 reaction show. We have a lot more to talk about, including Texas surviving a late scare from Kansas State, Oklahoma State beating Oklahoma in the final edition of Bedlam, Georgia's good game against Mizzou that you were at, all that and more we're going to get to. Please like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're here live with us, any interaction you can do with that channel is great. If you're listening to this on Sunday morning and you want to watch us live 3 times a week on the YouTube channel, please seek that out. Either way, the descriptions or the description of the show will have the links to both the podcasts and the YouTube channel. Anything that you can do to interact with the show, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that stuff goes a long way in helping Until Saturday grow. And we know without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do so. You can listen to the podcast in audio form while you're driving or running or whatever you do. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, leave a 5-star review. And if you're feeling froggy, it's Saturday night. I'm sure you are. You have some opinions. Be sure to leave a voicemail or text the Until Saturday phone line at 316-462-9852. That is 316-462-9852. So we can take your voicemails, your thoughts, your concerns, your hate, your love, whatever you have to say, and include that into the Sunday Sound Off show, which is live at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern on Sunday evening. So, okay, Dave. Lastly, sign up for the Until Saturday newsletter where you'll get your daily fill of college football news right to your inbox. You do not have to be subscribed to The Athletic to get this newsletter. That
you should be.
Link is also in the show's description. You should be subscribed to The Athletic. So much content, so much context for what you need to stay up to speed with what's going on in this crazy sport. Okay. Help me here. I'm going to have you help me.
Okay.
How am I supposed to feel about that Texas win over Kansas State? Texas got out to a really fast start. They seem to be laying the pipe a little bit on their opponent, and a few bad turnovers in the second half. So next thing you know, we're in overtime. It was 17-0, and I think I got to 27-7, and then Kansas State scored 2 quick touchdowns off of turnovers. Will Howard had 327 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Malik Murphy, had some glimpses of awesome throws. And then, of course, at times, not so awesome. His first quarter stats, Malik Murphy, 152 yards passing and a touchdown. The rest of the game, 96 yards and 2 turnovers. So it did not go well, but Texas escaped. So here's my dilemma, and I want you to help me out with this.
Okay.
On one hand, I'm trying to figure out how to feel about this. On one hand, you can make the case that Texas was playing against a team that was its biggest roadblock between now and the Big 12 championship game. They were doing so without their starting quarterback. It is a game that they most assuredly would have lost in the past because it was a Texas-like letdown spot, even if it was a big game, and they found a way to win at home. So if you box it up this way and you say, well, they were hurt, at the quarterback position, they would have lost in the past. They found a way to win. This team is different than the things of the past. You could really make yourself feel good about it. On the other hand, Texas was playing a very good Kansas State team. They were, boot to the throat for a while, and then they started playing poorly, turning the ball over. Kansas State just took complete control of the game, and probably could have won it had their coach maybe not gone for 2 in the overtime period.
Yeah, I didn't love that decision.
If you are a Texas fan, or if you are me, David, how should I feel?
Feel good, Ari. At the end of the day, the gap, I think we can agree, the gap between Quinn Ewers and Malik Murphy is pretty wide. It's pretty wide. And you're playing a top 25 team. If you win out and you're Texas, over 50% chance of making the playoff, probably. Something like that.
If they went out, they're in.
You sure?
I mean, I don't know. If we want to play the game of everybody wins out,
I'm just saying.
Sure,
that's what I'm saying.
They're going to get in. Yes.
Over 50%. Over 50% that you win, okay?
I'd say over 80%.
Okay, well, it doesn't really matter.
I just want to make sure you don't say it's a coin flip. They're going to get it.
You can't unlose a game, okay, regardless. You just got to win. You're missing your starting quarterback. You're playing a top 25 team. Just win. It doesn't really matter how you do it. The committee, especially when you're playing top 25 teams, like if you dominate a top 25 team, the committee's going to care. But, like, just win. This is the same thing as beating them by a touchdown in the committee's eyes. So just win your games. Win your games. And if you're playing with a backup quarterback against a top 25 team and you win, you got stuff you got to fix. You won. Take it. Get out of there. Go to next week. Don't lose to Iowa State on the road and go win a game.
Yeah, I might be covering the TCU game next week, but here's the thing that is mildly frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm.
I came into the year banging the drum that Texas would make the playoff. Yeah. And I did so under the notion that they were going to play and look the way that these super teams look because they're built similarly to them. And in the first quarter of that game, Malik Murphy had that dime touchdown pass to A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah.
Kansas State couldn't get a first down. I mean, when you look at it, C.J. Baxter, Jonathan Brooks, J.T. Saunders,
awesome in that first
Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell. I don't know how a team like Kansas State would be equipped to handle all of that firepower. I don't care how good they are. The firepower that Texas possesses is not something that people in the Big 12 are supposed to be to cover. So even though they didn't have their quarterback, there are other teams that are built like this that still assert their dominance when they have weaknesses at key positions. And it seemed for a while there that Texas was on its way to doing it. And then all of a sudden we got wrapped up in a Texas game of the past. And I don't know.
K-State's good though, Ari.
K-State is good. They are. I know.
K-State.
I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to say
you're
not
trying to, but you are. K-State's good, and they're tough mentally and physically, which matters.
But the concept of trust. We were texting about trust. Me, you, Max, and Ralph Russo.
Yeah.
You texted, and I'm going to frame it and put it right there, that you're beginning to trust Texas.
Yeah.
But did any of the way that game unfolded, okay, say feel good, take the win, move on, all those things. Texas would have lost that game in the past, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Do you trust them? Or did the end of that game make you trust them less?
Well, you're still playing with a backup quarterback. And what's to happen? Like, how does that game play out if Malik Murphy throws, those interceptions early instead of late? Does that cause your confidence to fall? I haven't loved.
He did almost have a pick in the end zone too in the first. I think, or first or second quarter that got dropped.
I would like to note for the record that I sent that text when Texas was winning 17-0. I said I'm beginning to trust them, and then of course, Tiger doesn't change his stripes. Sorry, and they made me regret sending that.
So that's the thing that I'm having a hard time with. On one hand, you're telling me to feel good about them, but then on the other hand, you're saying a Tiger doesn't change his stripes. So what is this Texas team? The team that I thought they were going to be? Or do you still think they're the team that you thought they were going to be?
I mean, they're somewhere in the middle, but it doesn't really matter, Ari. Just win. They got to just win. And they're in a really, really tough spot with no Quinn Ewers. They've been kind of dodgy.
We don't know when he's coming back. They're playing on the road against TCU, against the team that has had their number.
I mean, numbers aside, have you watched TCU this year, Ari?
Yeah, I watched.
It's a 4-5 football
Thursday.
team.
Yeah.
It's a 4-5 football team that looks like a 4-5 football team.
Yeah,
like you watch them and you're like, yeah, you guys are going to be 4-5.
This is the new Texas. So okay, we'll see how it goes. But I am pretty geared up for. By the way, Oklahoma State. I guess let's just go right there. Stay in the Big 12, and then we'll wrap up the Big 12 race here. But Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma in the last edition of Bedlam as we know it. 27-24 at home. Ollie Gordon, 137 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel, 344 yards passing and a touchdown. Oklahoma had 3 turnovers. Oklahoma State, a team that we both had left for dead like 6 weeks ago. All of a sudden,
I mean, the South Alabama game, to be fair.
No, I know.
They lost.
They would control their own destiny to get to Dallas now.
Yeah.
So what was your reaction to Bedlam overall? And then here's the Sooners' second half slump. Second half series, the first series was an interception. Second series touchdown. Third series turnover on downs. Fourth punt. Fifth fumble. Sixth field goal. Seventh on downs. There was a terrible pass interference call that was missed. Like absolutely awful.
Can we just say, Ari, Everyone knows that was pass interference. It didn't get called. Let's just leave it at that.
He pulled his arm and grabbed. It wasn't even close. If I were Ben Venables, my eyes would be bloodshot from broken blood vessels. That said, Oklahoma had more than ample opportunity to win the football game. So as you analyze this, first of all, a peaceful farewell to Bedlam. It's sad. Manny Navarro and I went live and talked about it for 10 minutes. Feels kind of just poetic justice that Oklahoma State got their last, laugh in the rivalry game that no longer exists. But what's your main takeaway from this?
Well, I like when teams who get screwed in the macro sense, getting their micro moment and winning that game and sort of, flipping the bird on the way out as Oklahoma leaves, because let's be clear, Oklahoma and Texas absolutely screwed the rest of the Big 12. I get why they had to do it. I get all the reasons they did it. They have to do it, all that stuff, whatever. But you did screw that league. Here, my takeaway from this, Ari, is the Baylor offense. Our defense is catching up to it?
Yeah, is that running its course?
Because Oklahoma has the athletes, and the thing with the Baylor offense for a lot of its time in the sport is when you have better athletes, you can absolutely pour it on. 28 points in the first quarter, score 60, score 70. You don't see that a lot anymore, and I have some theories on why that may be. But you look around at the teams that are running it, from top to bottom. Tennessee's still running it. Oklahoma's still running it. TCU is running it. Syracuse is still running it. Colorado is running it. These teams are not setting the world on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And Colorado literally demoted.
Seems like a good story for the offseason for sure to kind of talk to coaches.
It does. Yeah. But it's a good idea. Right. Colorado literally demoted their OC. People are already fired up with Kendall Briles at TCU. He's been there 8 games, whatever. Jeff Lebby, all I'm hearing is they want to run him out of town. Lebby sucks. Gabriel's worth. Okay, that's generally the conversation from our commenter here. I don't know. I mean, I have some questions about this offense's place because in all of college football, it's all cyclical. Trends come, trends go. The wishbone is,
back in.
Is progressive one day and it's archaic the next. What used to be the fastball is the curveball, and then the air raid is the curveball, and then everybody's running the air raid. So you got to build your offense or your defense. All these things just come and go. And it seems to me that in the sport of college football, we are witnessing defenses catching up to the Baylor offense and figuring it out, because we don't see a ton of just butt kickings and thrashings with this offense. And maybe it's a one-year thing. Maybe, it's a perfect storm. But that watching that game and kind of watching around the sport, to me, that stands out as because it's been the most popular system in the sport for 4 or 5 years now, and it seems like teams are figuring it out a little bit.
Well, I do think that we need to give Oklahoma State its flowers. They're 7-2 now. They started off 2-2 with back-to-back losses to South Alabama, 33-7 loss to South Alabama, and then at Iowa State. They've now rattled off 5 consecutive victories in conference play, beating Kansas State. Watch that game. I thought that Kansas State just forgot how to play football, but it might have just been the first game of the turnaround.
Oklahoma State's run has basically paralleled giving Ollie Gordon the ball.
Yes, but no, Kansas State, Kansas, West Virginia, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma, 3 out of their 5 are against above average to good, really good football teams. Mm-hmm. And now their final 3 games of the season are UCF, Houston, and BYU. Is Oklahoma State going to be playing Texas in the Big 12 championship game now?
Well, mathematically, right, they're in the driver's seat. I'd have to look at who they have left. But it seems like that's going to be the case. They're playing good football.
Who's got left?
Oklahoma State.
UCF, Houston, and BYU.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they might drop one of those games, but I doubt it. I mean, shout out to Mike Gundy, because we came into this season, I believe we said the exact sentence, Ari, Oklahoma State doesn't – where are all their great players? You looked at their roster and you said, I don't – and Ollie Gordon has kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. But this is a really good Oklahoma State team, and I'm not entirely sure like how I can break that down. Mike Gundy's had some weird experiences with coordinators the last couple of years. The sort of failed Derek Mason experiment.
But if you want to talk about relentless competence and relentless continued
Gundy's a good football
success,
coach.
Yeah. So the Big 12 race now, the two teams to beat are Texas and Oklahoma State, which is the way we all drew it up. Texas loses to Oklahoma, and then in November, Texas and Oklahoma State control their own destinies. But here we are. I think that we could say that Kansas State is a top 4 team in the conference. I'm starting to wonder if Oklahoma State deserves the same courtesy during a time in which we thought this could be like the beginning of the end of the Gundy era. So like that is a really, really nice turnaround, and congratulations to Oklahoma State. Revenge is a dish best cold. Wait, let me guess. You heat up your revenge on the skillet, right?
I mean, it depends on how I'm feeling that particular
You get your
day.
revenge to go, and then you cook it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, I want to make one last point too. I tweeted during the day about how I thought it was cool to see Oklahoma State win because Oklahoma ruined the rivalry. And then I got the Oklahoma fans like
whatever
slashed on me and said, I don't know what I'm talking about. Oklahoma will still play the game. Yeah, I'm sure they would. If your spouse cheated on you and said she wanted to remain married, would you want to keep being with her? Like, it's just I'm on the Oklahoma side of it, Oklahoma State side of this thing. So
it is what it is. I mean,
I hope they play again because the state has a lot of pride in this, and Oklahoma State and Oklahoma being on the same field is just it's a shame we're going to lose that. But also, too, it's not Oklahoma State's job to acquiesce to what Oklahoma wants to do all the time.
And also, let's not forget, Oklahoma and Texas, as Greg Sankey loves to remind us, they called them. It's not like the SEC was trying to pull them off. Oklahoma and Texas were not happy with the state of the Big 12, called up Greg Sankey and said, hey, man, you guys want to hang out sometime, maybe see where it goes? And here we are. Bedlam's dead. So
okay. One last question for you. I know we have to move on. We've got a lot to. What's your take on Oklahoma's season now after losing 2 straight, Kansas and Oklahoma State?
Well, they're not going to go 6-7, so that's
good.
You're disappointed because you looked like a national title contender after Red River. You lost to 2 good teams, one of which was on the road in a really tough atmosphere of a team that, I don't think I am disrespecting Oklahoma State to call this their Super Bowl. Is that fair? Most important game Oklahoma State has played, most important regular season game they have played in a long, long time. 2011 Bedlam, probably the last time they played a regular season game. That was as important as this one. So that's always going to be tough. It's not like you're letting go of the rope. You lost 2 games on the road to 2 good teams, albeit one of them with a backup quarterback. I mean, you're not infallible. You don't have the roster for that. You don't have the playmakers for that. You went 6-7 a year ago, so you've improved. I think when you taste, this season all of a sudden doesn't have a ceiling once you beat Texas, and then you're immediately humbled. It's gonna smart a little bit more, but like you're still probably gonna win 9 games, 10 games, and you went 6-7 a year ago. So, I get it's disappointing.
You go 10-2 and beat Texas. You probably take that if you're an Oklahoma fan coming into the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we were wondering before the season, like, Venables okay? Like,
one of the hot takes of the first podcast was Venables will not make it to the SEC.
Yeah.
Remember? Plausible.
Well, we both agreed
I think we both said implausible, but I mean, that's a thought process from people.
Uh-huh.
So, okay. The game you were at today, Dave. Missouri pushed number 2 Georgia to the end, ultimately fell 30-21. Georgia, I guess, kind of got their – I was wrong about the game. I thought that Georgia was just going to, as you like to say, punk them, and that's not what happened here. So you were at the game. You saw Georgia up close. You saw Mizzou. I think it's a shame that Luther Burden hurt himself. I think that probably had an impact on Mizzou's
he kind of
offense in the second half. Even though he reemerged in the fourth quarter, but he was all over the place in the first half, and then hurt his foot. on what could have been a touchdown play, and then the second half just didn't really have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So first, let me just give you the floor. You were there. You covered the game. I haven't read your column yet. What was it about? Just bring us up to speed.
So this is about how I thought it was going to play out. I thought Mizzou would compete as long as Brady Cook had some clean pockets and some space to operate. I thought they had the weapons to make it interesting, to put some points on the board. They ran the ball better than I thought they would. And even Kirby Smart after the game was like, they didn't do anything different. He's like, they didn't scheme us. They just whooped us, basically. Like, props to Mizzou. If Kirby Smart's tipping his cap to you, he doesn't have to do that. So, I for me, the column that I wrote is basically just Georgia. They play with a confidence. They play like a team that hasn't lost a regular season game in like a century. And there's a level of not panicking, a level of leadership, a level of just keep plugging away, and like the breaks are going to go our way because they always do. And sometimes Mizzou is trying to go score to take the lead, and they throw it right to your defensive tackle who has never had an interception in his 20-something year football career ever, and he almost takes it to the house. And Georgia they're such a mature team, and they don't do things to beat themselves. And even when they're a little sloppy, and obviously didn't have Brock Bowers today, they you saw it. We talked about earlier this season, the SEC Inside clip of the halftime when they're down double digits to South Carolina. It's like, okay, just keep playing. Keep playing. We're fine. And you see that all the time with this Georgia team, and things go their way. And I think that this is obviously not as dominant a Georgia team as we've seen, but they find ways to make plays that decide games. And that, to quote the great Dan Rubenstein, winning is a skill, and nobody's been better at it than Georgia.
Yeah, I wanted to quote the great Dan Rubenstein earlier. He always says, "Win your clunkers." He always says, "Win your clunkers."
Well, this is a top 15 team, Ari.
No, I'm not saying for this game. I was
for
just
Texas?
In general. Yeah, Texas,
Yeah.
but that probably wasn't a clunker either. But
no.
You said get out of there and win the game. Then I can just hear him say that on his show all the time. So, do you think that I jumped the gun with my Georgia take last week?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the thing I think we need.
I thought at the time, and I was confirmed today.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. And I tweeted this on the airplane coming back from Jacksonville last week after watching Georgia do what they did to Florida. We're going to play a game. I'm going to give you 3 teams. That's going to be Group A. Those 3 teams are Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. We haven't talked about Ohio State today, but they were losing to Rutgers at halftime. We will get to that, I think.
Will we?
That's Group A. Group B is the field.
Stars matter group. Okay.
The field, the rest of the sport. Who is going to win the national championship this year? Your life depends on it. Group A or Group B. Who are you betting on if everything comes crashing down in your life if you lose?
Well, so it's basically the Stars Matter group, which I believe will just be Georgia in the playoff versus Michigan, right? The core of this question is who wins between.
We don't know how the season's going to play out. If that's how you think it's going to play out.
I wanted to see Michigan post, like, can Michigan, the conversation and like.
Are we going to talk? We'll talk about that too. But like, you think that your viewpoint of everything changed based on what you saw there tonight?
No, but I was curious. I was just watching.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned on Thursday, if they come out there and it's 20-10 or something, I'm gonna be like.
It was 20-6 and midway through the third quarter.
Yeah, but they still looked like for the most. I mean, it was 17.
I mean, they were up 17-0. Yeah, quarter. I mean, I don't know. That game didn't change any. Let's view Michigan as a superpower team without the context of the Spygate stuff. Just view Michigan the way that we were viewing them a month ago.
Okay. I mean, if I life on the line, I'll take Georgia. I still think I don't disagree with you, Ari, that Georgia's the best team in the country.
But you also get Alabama and Ohio State in that group too.
Yeah, well,
like you're just dismissing right now. Because the thing that I think is interesting is Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama all are perceived, and maybe they just are, weaker versions of themselves than we've been accustomed to seeing the last 2 or 3 years, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the question I have is, now that you watched Mizzou play Georgia closely for a large portion of the game on the road, if you think that these 2 teams are down enough, or 3 teams, excuse me, are down enough this year with their quarterback changes and some of the turnover that they've had, has the tide lowered enough for an Oregon or a Washington or a Michigan or a Florida State to win the national championship this year?
I mean, it's close. I don't believe in Ohio State at all. I'm not even thinking about Ohio State in that group. I don't think Ohio State's very good. I don't think they have the offense to do what they need to do.
I think that's a fair
I don't love what I've seen from Kyle McCord. Alabama, very flawed, but very tough as well. And Georgia is Georgia. So it wouldn't be unthinkable. I know you think it's unthinkable for a team like Oregon to beat.
No, I don't this year. I don't think it's unthinkable.
Okay. Well, I would take Georgia if my life depended on it, but I
say Group A. You get Group A.
I think it's a coin flip between Group A and
because you can't just say I jumped the gun last week on Georgia and then dismiss Alabama as a team that can beat them.
Well,
see how that's inconsistent?
It's not that I'm dismissing them, but I'm saying is there a look ahead line in that game? Like, would Bama be like a? I'm sure it'd be like
6 points or something like that.
Something
maybe
like that.
Less. Maybe 4.
So like they could do it. I don't think Alabama is going to beat Georgia. You
cannot
Atlanta.
Tell me that me thinking that Georgia is just going to run the table and hand them the trophy now is a premature notion, and then dismiss the notion that Alabama could beat them. It's either one or the other.
I think it's more. I don't hold Alabama like in a super like, oh, how's anybody going to beat these guys? They've been on the ropes a lot this year. Tennessee, Texas A&M. I don't know if you'd point. I wouldn't count today necessarily. Texas just
the only team that hasn't been on the ropes this year is Michigan, and they haven't fought in a heavyweight fight yet. So I mean, being on the ropes, sure. But I mean, Oregon has lost.
I mean, you could make the case.
Washington was on the ropes as recently as this evening against a team that couldn't stop a nosebleed. Teams have been on the ropes. I know what you're saying, because you're used to seeing Alabama as a team that you cannot fathom losing until they do. Yeah, I understand that. I get it, and I'm with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I think that we need to start shifting our brains on how we view this Alabama team. And I don't know if I'm crazy. I think that what is it going to take for you to take them seriously?
I think LSU's defense has poisoned your brain on Alabama.
But I've been starting to sip the Bama Kool-Aid for the last 3 weeks.
I've been with you. I've been with you.
This isn't just tonight.
A little bit. No, but don't let LSU's defense push you over the edge on Bama's offense and their weapons, which are still, I think, deficient.
Yeah. I think Ladd McConkey, first of all, is this the deepest group of receivers that we've had in the country? I want to think about, there's a future NFL star in all 5 Power 5 conferences, multiple in some cases. And I think Ladd McConkey deserves to be in that discussion to a certain extent. That guy's outrageously good.
Really good. He's really good. Yeah.
Can I say something that's borderline offensive to Georgia?
What do you mean?
I don't think their offense is a gangbuster offense either, to be honest.
It's pretty good, Ari. It's pretty good.
Beck brings his A game. Last 5 games, 1,500 yards, 306 average, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
They can lean
Stetson
on
Bennett,
you.
by comparison, from week 6 to 10 last year was 1,300. 10 touchdowns, 4 picks. So Beck is playing better.
I still think, Ari, you're forgetting the personnel. Okay, for one, even without Brock Bowers, Georgia still has Missouri and Mississippi State's best receivers from last year on their team. Ra Thomas and Dom Lovett have had not the year that a lot of people thought that they would have, but on paper they're still there. And
I'm just saying, I don't think that Georgia is going to score 45 on Bama's defense like it's nothing.
No, I'm not saying.
So I'm saying really Alabama could find itself in a 21-17 game in the fourth quarter against Georgia and win. And we'll see when and if we get to that point. But the context of this discussion, I think, is interesting because if you've listened to the show or read my columns the last 5 years, could not resign myself to the notion that a team not in Group A could win. And this year is the first year where I actually can acknowledge that they could. I just don't know which of the Group B teams I would latch onto. Michigan has been the one that has been the most untouchable so far this year, but also wrapped up in the strangest college football story we've had in maybe my lifetime.
Yeah, I'm very curious if that affects them down the stretch.
Yeah, and maybe it won't. Maybe they'll just beat the crap out of Ohio State, win the Big Ten, and be that team. But it's hard to analyze them without that creeping into your brain a little bit. And then, of course, Florida State, without their two best receivers, we're playing kind of a weird game today. And, Oregon has lost to Washington. Washington's defense, I know we poured it on USC's defense quite a bit earlier in the conversation, but Washington's defense doesn't necessarily, inspire much, fear into my heart. I don't know what the team is going to be. So it's just an interesting dynamic. I think we got through the biggest games of the day, but here are some other scores in games that we need to touch on. Clemson picked up its first win today against a ranked opponent. They beat Notre Dame 31-23. We were laughing about this coming into the week because I sent you the stat that according to BetMGM, that Notre Dame -3 was the most taken bet of any public bet in the entire day. And we talked about it on the pick show if you listen, but like the line seemed suspicious. And then like Clemson kind of mauled them. So somebody said in the chat, Ryan Dutter here already needs to give Dabo Sweeney his flowers. I mean, I guess they're no longer 4-4. I don't know what that means, but certainly.
Can we get Tyler on the show later today?
Yeah, Tyler from Spartanburg really, really flamed this Clemson team into winning, but at least they didn't lie down. They could have lied down and just got ready for next year. But this is going to be an interesting discussion for Ohio State too. Maybe we should talk about that as another result here that's not listed on the rundown. But let's just talk about Ohio State for a second.
Ari, before you get into Ohio State.
You're going to save me from myself and being too.
Yes. Rutgers is 6-2, Ari.
No, I know.
And
I'm not panicking about that.
And they won by 19 points. Just saying.
Their offense is fractured.
Yes, it's not good. It's
so
not fractured.
Whatever you want to say to try to stop me from being harsh. You're the one who already dismissed them as a Group A contestant. You're like, you didn't.
Because they don't have
I say the same thing as you, and then people say I'm being too harsh.
They don't have the quarterback.
But they beat Rutgers by 19, Dave. Which one is it? I don't know. I think that it's possible that Ohio State will no longer be number 1 on Tuesday. So partially because Notre Dame got its ass kicked, and Wisconsin, another important win for them, lost to Indiana on Saturday, and they were losing to Rutgers at halftime. And this was a game earlier in my career when I was on the Ohio State beat that I didn't even go to. I'd go on a recruiting trip because every time they played, it was 63-0.
Yeah.
So partially want to give props to Greg Schiano for making a functional program out of Rutgers. I mean, like you said, they're 6-3 now. I mean, they're much better than they've been. They've got a pretty competent defense and run game from what we've seen in the past. In Ohio State, some of those points was a pick 6 by Jordan Hancock. Trey Henderson, 128 yards rushing. I think that a healthy Trey Henderson gives Ohio State an extra element to go along with Marvin Harrison that can make their offense more explosive. But Kyle McCord, even though he threw for 189 yards and 3 touchdowns, it's just so jarring to watch Ohio State try to operate offensively when you've gotten used to CJ Stroud and Justin Fields and Braxton Miller and JT Barrett and all the players that I covered during my time on that beat. So, I don't know if Ohio State matches up in terms of an offense that can score a ton of points if they get into the same field as Georgia, but they have the athletes, and that's better than not having them. So I don't know. I have a really hard time with Ohio State because on one hand, I want to be like, yes, Ohio State's a contender no matter what. But on the other hand, I watch them and it's just it's ugly.
Your Heisman winner, Ari, 4 catches for 25 yards today and 2 touchdowns. But.
Yeah, and 2 touchdowns and the game-winning touchdowns. Yeah. He's probably not going to win the Heisman. You're right about the stats. He doesn't have the Marvin Harrison we're talking about, doesn't have the overall production of what it takes to win the Heisman as a receiver. I see that is probably true. I don't know what
you can do it as a quarterback. If you go 13-0, you don't have to have crazy numbers as a quarterback. But
I don't know who the Heisman front runner is right now. Jaden Daniels is now out of it probably. I don't know. Ohio State So, like, I just don't know where the Heisman discussion is. It'll be interesting to see the straw poll. I'm assuming Penix will probably be up there. I'm sure Harrison will be up there, but there's no slam dunk quarterback. So that I've always thought that if Ohio State somehow goes to Ann Arbor and Marvin catches 3 touchdowns and just goes crazy in that game and they win, that his overall lack of overall production will take a backseat to who Ohio State is without him, which is probably a 2-loss or 1-loss team right now. So
I still think, Ari, the winner of the Pac-12 championship wins the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
I felt that way
like
for
Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Whoever wins that game, it'll be a strong closing argument against a good team, and whoever wins that game, I think wins the Heisman. I think, Ari, on the Ohio State-Georgia conversation, I was actually talking to our colleague Seth Emerson about this earlier. It's the one thing I missed about the BCS era, because in the BCS era, you could tell how far the gap was between the teams, and you could kind of project, okay, this is how that's going to play out.
What, based on the data?
Yeah, but you don't really know, like, how far the gap was between Ohio State and Georgia. We don't really know. And I think, hilariously, Georgia beats Mizzou, but they probably didn't beat them bad enough to drop them out of the top 15. So, like, that's probably still going to be a top 15 win. Definitely going to be a top 20 win. I think they do top 25 and top 10, right? So, but it's still probably a top 15 win for them. And so it will be close, I imagine.
Let me just remind you of one thing, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
You remember how we all felt about Ohio State going into the playoff last year?
Soft, going to get pushed around by Georgia.
What happened?
They went toe-to-toe with Georgia.
They had a month because they had athletes.
Yeah.
They played close because they have the athletes.
Yeah.
This game's complicated, but sometimes it's not. Kyle here says defense wins championships, Ari. One, I don't agree with that anymore.
Yeah.
And two, I think it's a nice reminder to say Ohio State's defense has played quite well this year in comparison to what they were last year. And I think that Ohio State will be in more games, or will be in games that they might not have been in had this not been the case. So I think Ohio State last year had to beat you 42-38 to win. If we're talking about a top-tier matchup, I think Ohio State could theoretically beat Michigan 21-17. And if that happens, then who knows? But yes, the defense has played well. I want to give Ohio State the credit for their defense, and Jim Knowles has done a good job. So
yeah, defense doesn't win championships.
It does
defenses not, and offenses with weapons and playmaking quarterbacks win championships.
Yeah. So it's a hard thing because the number one overall team in the country is number one based on resume, but now the resume took a massive hit on Saturday and they didn't look good in the process. I would be surprised if they were number one again on
And
Tuesday.
Georgia's resume got better.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I wasn't part of the playoff discourse on Tuesday on the podcast feed, and I
wasn't either.
But I thought that the thing that always irritates me about the playoff committee and going through, we both did the mock, and I understand how hard it is to do it, and the way that you rank, you do it 3 at a time, but sometimes I just feel like the rankings are inconsistent with thought process. And last week's rankings were inconsistent because you had Ohio State number one based on resume, and then you had another team that has a really good resume at number 4 in Florida State, right? Mm-hmm. And then the 2 and 3 teams were very good teams with terrible resumes in Michigan and Georgia. And it's like, question. Which one is it? Is it resume or is it eye test? You can't judge Ohio State based on one thing and then dismiss it for the next team. It just doesn't factor to me. So
I will say, though,
interesting to see how that plays out.
That bugs me, but also it doesn't matter. I didn't really.
It doesn't matter, but also too, it's like if these people are entrusted into putting out the rankings, I think every year they've gotten them right. Mm-hmm. But consistency is not that much to ask for, and it's just hard because everybody does it differently in that room. And it's I sympathize with the people in the room, but fans want a clear and concise understanding of why they're ranked a certain way. And a lot of times what they spit out is not something that is easily explainable. So anyway, that's the Ohio State discussion. People are clamoring for us to,
All right, quick note. The revitalized Colorado offense, 5 points, thanks to a returned extra point late in the third quarter.
Yeah, I mean it's rushing attempts 14 for 17 yards too. So
whoa,
yeah, interesting, huh?
You guys should go listen to our Friday show where we predicted all of this, talking about just weird move. You feel like you got to do something, and maybe don't do something.
Didn't do the right thing.
Plugging.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't anything to do. There was nothing to do.
Yeah.
You didn't need to do anything. Keep working. Anyway.
Okay, so let's just touch on Michigan real quick. They beat the crap out of Purdue, 41-13. Next week they're playing Penn State. I watched part of this game. They got out to a 17-0 lead, so the intrigue went away. Then I looked back and
I didn't really
it was
watch
20-6. It wasn't really that entertaining, but is there anything to glean from them beating Purdue by?
They looked normal. They looked mostly focused, more focused than not focused. Maybe they took their foot off the gas a little bit. I just wanted to know if we were going to see a totally different Michigan team, because the noise around the
Purdue
program
17, Michigan 18.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I was just curious, but the noise around the program is deafening, and it's only going to get louder as the season sort of starts to crescendo. And I think it'll be a real test for the culture in the program and for the focus and doing all the things that you need to do to keep performing and keep winning. And it's going to be really difficult on all the kids, because the coach might get suspended. You might, maybe they hit the full on, nuclear option and ban you from the postseason. You don't really know what the Big Ten is going to do. It's unpredictable. There's no precedent for this. You've got the whole league pressuring all the leadership to punish you and do something. It's unclear what they will or won't do, or when they will or won't do that. And maybe you wake up, Wednesday morning and you've learned that you can't play for a Big Ten title, or you wake up Thursday and your coach is suspended for 3 games or the season or whatever. You don't really know. And it's going to be tough, I think, for Michigan to sort of navigate these pretty choppy waters. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. They see a lot of the stuff. They hear a lot of the stuff. But on Saturday, 2 weeks of noise, and they performed well. So shout out.
Yeah,
to them.
and Ryan Walters, the Purdue head coach, who was outspoken about what his opinion of the Spygate matter was, gave Jim Harbaugh the fastest handshake in the history of humanity. So that was kind of entertaining. I want to ask you one last question about Michigan before we go, not to focus more on what the accusations are. I don't know if you saw, but New Mexico State posted on the scoreboard, welcome Connor Stallions to the game, and it said probably in parentheses, which is just another reminder that the trolling in the sport is unmatched and not something
you had in the summer of Swift, Oklahoma State playing "We Are Never Getting Back Together" in the post-game afterglow of the fans storming the field and tearing down the goalposts. Well played, Cowboys. Well played.
But how many teams in college football would be undefeated with Michigan's schedule right now?
It's a good question.
20?
Yeah.
25?
They wouldn't be as dominant.
I'm not saying dominant, but undefeated.
I know. That's all I'm saying. What's the point of the question, though?
Well,
are you wavering on Michigan?
No. I mean, I don't know anything about what advantages. It's hard to break them down.
Yeah.
But what I do know is they're playing Penn State on the road next week, and it's the first time they're playing an actual team this year.
Yeah.
And we're already into mid-November. I know that Michigan has looked dominant. I know that Penn State's offense has left a lot to be desired, and Michigan's defense, I think, is probably better than Ohio State's right now. And I don't know how Penn State's going to score, but on the road in an environment against a team that is still, we've forgotten about Penn State. They lost to Ohio State. They haven't been a discussion point much, but they are still hungry as hell to win that game. I cannot imagine, the type of environment that they're going to have there. And, James Franklin absolutely needs to win against a team like this again. It's the first real test again that Michigan's going to face. They don't have the sign stealing situation happening like that. Purdue is snoozy to me. I'm going to be excited to watch that game next week.
Over under 14.5 points for Penn State in that game. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I don't know, but I am more interested in what that game tells us than what we learned tonight.
Maybe, but I want to see them on the field after all the noise of the last couple of weeks, and I felt fine about what they did. So.
Florida State started slow. They were without Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, which is like, why even play?
Yeah,
they were losing to Pitt for a while there, but they scored 14 unanswered points in the second half. They beat Pitt
really
24-7. Jordan Travis scored his 31st rushing touchdown at Florida State, which is now a program record for the Seminoles. Just a team that, I mean, Pitt was really, really bad last week. And Pitt was winning 7-0 relatively deep into the second quarter, I believe. And then Florida State turned it on. They are still undefeated and obviously a main discussion point. I also forgot to mention after the Clemson thing that Dabo said on the field, if Clemson's a stock, you better be buying all you freaking can right now, which I thought was a hilarious quote. Because I'm
sure you appreciated it, but
yeah, I did, because I think the CEO of Enron wanted people to buy their stock too. But another result: Louisville beat Virginia Tech 34-3. They might be in the top 10 of the CFP rankings on Tuesday. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know what to make of Louisville. You got to have them up there because they are what they are, but like, I don't know. This was pretty impressive. I thought Virginia Tech could hang. They've been playing really good football. Like Louisville, you look at what they did to Notre Dame, and then like today was pretty impressive. But I just,
when you lose Pitt,
they don't do it for me. Yeah. So
but there is a legitimate chance that Louisville, with Virginia at Miami and Kentucky left on their schedule, will be finished the regular season at 11-1 and in the ACC championship game, which is a hell of a first year for a coach that's supposed to save the program.
Yeah.
I test Louisville or Penn State.
I guess Penn State because they're more physical, but Louisville has actual weapons. I mean, Louisville has two guys in their receiver and running back. Well, not running back, but Jamari Thrash is better than any receiver that Penn State suits up a lot. I don't know, Jawar Jordan. I'd say probably Nick Singleton's better than him. Katron Allen probably better than him, but not. I mean, it's close.
Okay, well, let's
backs with the offensive line. Those backs have just like kind of not had a lot of space to do some special things.
I just found out that our producer has the Dabo Sweeney sound. Can we please just play it on the show?
There's Molly with the winning coach.
Coach, at the end there, you fell to your knees. That fumble was not the defining moment of the game. What was it like to watch your defense seal this for you?
Well, I mean, it was awesome. They were awesome all day. I think they had like 4 or 5 punts in a row. It was a great finish. It's kind of been that type of year, but today we made one more play, and I'm just really proud of the fight with the guys. I'm really happy for our players.
Speaking of fight, you said this team will not stop fighting despite adversity. What kind of fight did you see from the decimated offensive line?
Well, listen, we had 10 or 11 starters out. We've got linemen in there, Trent Howard, freshman Harris Sewell, against a great football team, and they battled their asses off today. And I'm really proud of them. We ain't had much to go our way this year, but the one thing that has shown up every week is the heart and the fight of Clemson. And I know we're down and everybody's throwing dirt on us, but if Clemson's a stock, you better buy all you freaking can buy right now. Let's go.
At least Apple seems to have a very good grasp of the stock market. I don't know that I'm buying
low.
I don't know that I'm buying a Clemson resurgence in the years.
No, this is in the years to come. Yeah, like do you buy low?
I know, I'm not talking about this year, but I'm talking like
are
they going to get back to the level of where you're competing for national titles and you're on the same plane as your beloved Group A, your Stars Matter situation? So
we're not watching this, but the chat is saying that Shedeur Sanders has been benched.
I don't believe that happened. I'm sure he's banged up.
Yeah,
he was limping around. I don't think he got benched. I've been half watching, but not really. I don't believe that he actually got benched. That's probably
more games to go through here, Dave.
Yes.
Oregon blew out Cal 49-19. They played some grab ass early and then just poured it on him in the second half. Shedeur didn't get benched. He's in the locker room, so that clears it up.
I thought the new OC would have fixed that. That's weird. Anyway,
yeah. And one other thing here that I wanted to mention, I don't see on the rundown, is the A&M game. In the first half, They played Ole Miss. They fought hard, really hard, I thought, at the end of the game. They were down by 14 in the second half, and they got within striking distance to potentially take the lead at the end of the game. But is there anything to add about the Jimbo Fisher scenario here, or is it just another loss against a top 10 team on the road in your mind?
Well, I was talking about this with some colleagues today, actually, and there's a strong case that, like, Jimbo's buyout only goes down to, like, 63 or 66 or something next year. So, like, people talk about the money and, like, but if you don't believe it's going to happen, then just do it. Like, you're saving, like, you're talking about $8 million difference. Like, you're already in it. Yeah. But I still think, like, a second year by Petrino, maybe Connor Wegman stays healthy, maybe your receivers get a little bit older.
Just keep holding on,
Well, you still have the talent to be good, and there's a chance.
But the question is he wasting it?
I mean, yeah, the short answer to that is yes, but they're just unpleasant to watch, man. Like, the vibes are bad. They're not particularly fun. Like, Anaya Smith in the open field is, like, the only time that they're really enjoyable to watch. And A&M's a tough watch, man. They are just not. But I just, unless you totally tank and you've lost the team and your effort is gone, which I don't think is happening, I think you got to, you want to pay, again, it comes down to, you want to pay $120 million to get Mike Elko? Like, really? And that's not to say that Mike Elko's a bad coach or wouldn't do well there, but, like, $120 million to take that chance? I'd give one more year to Jimbo. So.
Yeah, interesting. That'd be an interesting.
Sorry, Aggies.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't anticipate that.
What?
Really I thought you were. Yeah, I thought you'd be like, let's rip the cord here, and it's not your money.
No, I mean, we've had. Ari, I'm gonna take a page out of your book here. You can shrug and say, well, A&M's only getting the players because their collective is so strong or whatever. You can say that. But at the end of the day, you have a coach who has brought you the most talented roster that you've ever had, probably, at least in the modern era. That is not nothing. And I know it's underwhelming. I know it's frustrating. I don't blame you. But, like, if you get a new coach, there's not saying that that's not going to taper off. And then the possibility of, like, right now, A&M has the possibility of being a championship team. If all of a sudden your roster's sliding and you go from 3rd in the 24/7 talent composite to, like, 12th, 15th, then you're no longer in the we could possibly. Then you're in 9 and 3 land.
I just have fantasies now about a functional coach getting his hands on these players before that happens.
Yeah, maybe.
Quinshon Judkins is one of the best running backs in the country. He had 3 touchdowns in the go-ahead one to keep Ole Miss's playoff hopes alive. They're number 10 in the country. They might be going up. And guess who they're playing next week? On the road at Georgia. Is this going to be another Ole Miss gets slapped around by a really good team, or do you have any confidence in Lane Kiffin's squad to play against Georgia in any sort of meaningful way?
I've kind of been radicalized, with the Lane big game stuff still a little bit. I mean, I will say the one interesting thing, our colleague Seth Emerson was trying to figure out the last time that Georgia has played a Lane Kiffin offense. It's been a long time. I think by his estimation, it might have been the Bama years. It's the last time that they played a Kiffin offense.
They scored 10 points against Alabama.
I know.
Go up in these games. I don't know.
Well, Ari, I think the one thing it's worth noting, Bama's defense is better than Georgia's. It sure is, bud. It is.
Sure is.
It is.
All right, let's rapid fire through some of this stuff here. Arkansas frustrated Florida 39-36. I mean, you're an Arkansas guy. I'll let you take the wheel here.
Well, here's the thing, Ari. I said this. Dan Enos was not a good idea. And credit to Sam Pittman for recognizing this 8 games in. Bought himself a lot of goodwill by making that change. And then you get 2 weeks to prepare for Florida. You go down to the swamp and win for the first time ever. And you score 39 points while you do it. Our colleagues, Kennington Smith and Seth, do the Vibe rankings. So Arkansas might be like number 2 or 3 this week in the Vibes rankings. because the vibes have shifted literally almost overnight. So,
and I'm sure the
props
vibes on the other sideline too with Florida have shifted pretty quickly too.
So props to Sam Pittman in Arkansas, because it's never easy to fire a coach, but you make a midseason change, you admit, hey, I screwed up last offseason, that's my bad, and you fix some stuff. And Arkansas looked a lot like their old selves. Rocket Sanders running around, he's healthy, of course. KJ Jefferson looking like a new man. Sometimes midseason, I will say, Ari, if you're going to fire a coordinator midseason, I probably would not replace him with somebody who hasn't coached college football since 1998, but maybe that's just me. Sorry to belabor the point, but it was.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were talking about Pat Shurmur again. And it's like, yeah, here we are. Yeah,
we are. But like, maybe I'm just stuck because I have them on my second.
I think we know what Monday's column is going to be.
Well, no, probably not. But it's wild. It just is a wild decision.
A few more things to get through here, Dave. Michigan State snapped their 6-game losing streak and wins for the first time since September 9th by beating Nebraska 20-17.
Just a horrific loss from Nebraska.
Yeah,
I know you're on the road. I know Nebraska's not great.
We were trying to buy in on Nebraska. We turned it around.
Felt like they had some stuff going, and man,
I fell for it. I thought Nebraska was going to win that one.
I thought they were too.
They've got Maryland, Wisconsin, and Iowa, or Maryland, Iowa, and Wisconsin for Nebraska to close out the year. Do you think they're going to make a bowl game?
They're at Maryland, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and they're at 4 or 5.
I think they're at 5.
Yeah, they'll be one of those teams. They might beat Iowa.
I think they're at 5.
If they're at 4, I'll say no. If they're at 5,
no, they're at 5. Yeah, 5 and 4.
Yeah, congrats to Nebraska.
Wisconsin losing to Indiana today.
As one does.
Is this? I mean, we expected growing pains from Wisconsin.
Yeah, but
is this the worst loss of like Fickell's coaching career?
I don't know. No Mordecai. They got some backs hurt as well. It's injuries. Indiana, for whatever it's worth. I don't think they're world beaters, but they did hang with Penn State a week ago. It's not good, but it's not like, they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Illinois beat Minnesota on a last-second Isaiah Williams touchdown, winning 27-26.
What are we doing with all this Big West stuff, Ari? I can't. We got to get out of the Big Ten West.
There were a few results away from there being a 5-way tie at 3-3 in the Big Ten West.
Big Ten West is so depressing. It's so depressing.
Okay, fine. How about some bowl eligibility? UTSA beat North Texas 37-29. West Virginia beat BYU, who also had 5 wins, 37-7. Coastal Carolina beat Old Dominion 28-24, and Texas State beat Georgia Southern 45-24. Bowl eligible for the first time since 2014. Quite the program turnaround there for Texas State. New Mexico State is also bowl eligible for consecutive years for the first time since 1959 and 60. Hey, Duke beat Wake Forest on a game-winning field goal, 24-21 on Thursday, and then BC, who I think has rattled off some wins here.
They're hot.
Beat Syracuse 17-10 on Friday, and then Wyoming beat Colorado State in their rivalry game, 24-19. And I had the team total over in the Wyoming game, and it was 24.5, and they had 24 points and got stuffed 4 times at the goal line at the end of the game, and I lost that bet because of it. So
congrats
I'm gonna hand the wheel over to you to do high five for the G5. You got the form up?
I don't. But
I'll do it. High five for the G5 because I'm the G5 guy of this podcast.
You love the G5, Ari. Every time I'm talking, you're like, "Hey, can we talk about the G5?"
Game-winning 35-yard field goal by Colby Ciasmus to beat Kennesaw State and earn SHSU their first win of the year, 24-21.
No they were more allergic to winning. FBS teams.
Allergic to winning this year, and they did it.
Yes.
Your 12th seed in the expanded playoff, Air Force, loses to Army 23-3. Army is a win over Navy away from bringing home the Command and Chiefs trophy for the first time since 2020. James Madison remains perfect on the season after beating Georgia State 42-14. Number 24 Tulane played with its food, but kept its spot as the top group of 5 team by beating Eastern Carolina in an ugly 13-10 game. I think Tulane was inside the 5 like 5 times in this game and didn't really come away with any points. Arkansas State had its first 5-win-plus season since 2019 with a 37-17 win over Louisiana. And let's get to the locks of the week before we get out of here. Your lock of the week was easy. Kentucky minus 3.5 against
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, yes. That was pretty easy cover. Max has had 32. Michigan minus 32.5 against Purdue. That did not cover. It's just hard to cover 32.
Quite well though.
Yeah. I had Georgia minus 15.5 as a bit. That didn't hit. Neither did my live bet of minus 9.5. But you lived to tell the other day, the new day. And then the trap games were. Mine was Texas, Kansas State. It didn't count, but it was a trap game. They went to overtime. What was your trap game?
It might have been Virginia Tech at Louisville, I think. Or maybe it was Tulane. And no, I think it was Virginia Tech and Louisville, I believe.
How'd that go?
Louisville avoided the trap. Let's just say that.
And then Max's trap game was?
The cockfight in Columbia.
That's right. Jacksonville State.
By the way, had him. Speaking of on the ropes, Jacksonville State had him on the ropes.
I know Jacksonville State was also like 20 yards away from not covering the game at all at the end of it. If you were paying close attention, not that I was for any particular reason, but it was very close at the end. That was a winner for me. Thank you very much. Thank you guys all for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday's live reaction show. Be sure you're following the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll be notified when new episodes are up. We always appreciate a 5-star review, a rating, anything you can do. And also hit that subscriber button on the YouTube channel and join us every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday for our live streams. Subscribe to the Until Saturday newsletter. All of the links to the podcast feed, the YouTube channel, and that newsletter will be found in your show's descriptions. We will talk to you on Sunday afternoon, evening for the Sunday Sound Off edition. Be sure to leave your voicemail or text in the line if you want to be included. That phone number is 316-462-9852. Again, that is 316-462-9852. That was a crazy day of college football. I cannot wait to wake up with a refreshed mind and to break it down all again on Sunday evening. And then we've got some columns to write, a lot of great content coming on The Athletic this week. Be sure to think about subscribing to The Athletic, the written product. I think you'll be pleased with it, especially if you like other sports too, because we've got beat writers and national writers with the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. We're across the pond in the UK. We've got everything. So, Dave, thanks for staying up with me. It's almost midnight. I'm going to go watch the Arizona Wildcats, see if they can close out this dub. And then we'll catch you guys on Sunday. For Dave Ubben, I'm Ari Wasserman. That was the latest edition of Until Saturday.